The warehouse breathes silence, that suffocating kind where even the rain outside feels distant, muffled, like the world has stopped listening. Metal rafters disappear into shadow above, and the concrete floor stretches grey and endless, reflecting the single bare bulb that swings in slow arcs overhead. Water pools in the low spots, mirrors of nothing, and the air tastes of rust and wet asphalt and something else, something like grief made physical. Vincent Ferraro drops to his knees. He moves without grace, without the deliberate control that defines him. His knees hit the concrete hard enough that Marco and Pietro flinch against the far wall, their hands instinctively moving toward weapons they will not draw. The sound echoes. One sharp report. The sound of power abandoning its own body. His suit costs $8,000. Italian wool, hand-stitched seams, the color of midnight at the bottom of the ocean. Rain has soaked through the jacket and the white silk shirt beneath, the fabric clinging to the hard lines of his chest. His dark hair, silvered at the temples like a man who earned every grey hair through blood and will, is plastered against his skull. Water runs down his face. Not all of it is rain. Tears stream down Vincent Ferraro's face like he is a broken thing, and he is kneeling, and he is trembling. Sofia Rivera stands 4 feet away, barefoot on the concrete, and she does not move. She cannot move. Her body has become a statue, carved from fear and confusion and something else she cannot name. Her yellow dress, a clearance rack find, $5 at a thrift store last month, the kind of yellow that screams poverty to anyone who knows how to look, hangs wet against her thin frame. She is 28 years old but looks 40. Motherhood and loss and grinding fear have carved their signatures into her face, made her eyes older than her years, turned her shoulders inward like she is always bracing for the next blow. In her right hand, clutched so tightly her knuckles have turned white, is a prayer card. Worn, creased, the edges soft from being folded and unfolded 1,000 times. The Virgin Mary printed in faded blue, her hands outstretched, her face serene in a way Sofia has never been serene. On the back, in shaky handwriting, someone has written, "God sees us. Even when we are invisible." In her left pocket is a $5 bill. The last $5 she has in the world. Vincent reaches toward her, his hand trembling, and stops inches away from her dress. The space between them is nothing and everything. His wedding ring catches the bare bulb's light, gold, worn smooth by decades of wear, a ring he has never removed though the woman who gave it to him has been dead for 6 years. His other hand presses against his chest, and his voice comes out shattered, broken into pieces that do not fit together. "You saved her," he chokes. "You saved my daughter when I failed my son." Sofia opens her mouth. Nothing comes out. The rain hammers the metal roof above them, 1,000 fists demanding entrance, demanding to be let inside to the warmth, but the warehouse holds them out. Water drips through gaps in the corrugated panels, splashes into pools that mirror the bare bulb, and somewhere in the building the wind whistles through broken windows, a sound like something alive and in pain. "I don't understand," Sofia whispers. Her voice is barely audible, a whisper like a candle in the wind, fragile enough that one breath might extinguish it. "Who are you?" Marco and Pietro exchange a look. In 15 years of blood and loyalty and unquestioning obedience, neither man has ever seen Vincent Ferraro shed a single tear. They have seen him order men executed with a gesture so small it could be mistaken for a wave. They have seen him negotiate the fate of entire neighborhoods over espresso so strong it could wake the dead. They have seen him smile once, and that smile terrified them more than his rage ever did. But they have never seen him cry. Vincent closes his eyes. His whole body shakes with the effort of containing whatever lives inside him, whatever has been locked away for 6 years, for longer, maybe forever. When he speaks again, his voice sounds like it is being dragged across broken glass. "My name is Vincent Ferraro," he says. "And 6 hours ago, you saved my daughter's life." The words mean nothing to Sofia, and everything. Her mind cannot process them. She was walking home from the diner, the graveyard shift finally finished at 6 a.m., her feet aching in the cheap shoes that are falling apart at the heel. She had $12 for the day and had spent $10 on a bus pass home. The rain was falling hard, the kind of rain that comes in August when the sky decides to break open and flood the world. She was thinking about Micah. She was always thinking about Micah. 7 years old. Born with a heart that does not work correctly. The doctors used words she learned to understand: ventricular septal defect, surgical intervention, 2 weeks before irreversible complications. The words all meant the same thing: her son was dying, and he needed $200,000 to live. She did not have $200,000. She did not have $200. She had $5, hidden in her pocket like a secret, an emergency fund that was not an emergency fund because emergencies never ended. The street corner at Hanover and Richmond was empty. The rain had driven everyone inside, into warm places where people belonged. Sophia was walking alone when she heard the screaming. A child's voice, thin and terrified, cutting through the sound of the downpour. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, had wandered into traffic. A delivery truck was bearing down, the driver's eyes locked forward, the child frozen in headlights and rain and her own terror. Sophia did not think. She ran. Her feet carried her without permission, without consultation, and her hands reached out and grabbed the child and pulled her back to the curb. The truck missed them by inches. The wind of it nearly knocked them both down. The child's small body trembled against Sophia's, and Sophia held her, and for the first time in 2 years, since her husband died, since the debt started, since hope began to die along with him, Sophia felt like she was more than a failure. "It's okay," she whispered to the child. "You're safe. You're safe now." But the child was not safe. The child was soaking wet and terrified and alone on a corner in Boston, and Sophia did not know where she belonged. She waited. She waited in the rain for someone to come, and time moved differently when you were waiting. Seconds stretched. Minutes became eternities. The child clung to Sophia's dress, and Sophia held her, and tried not to fall apart. The black SUV arrived with no sound, just appeared like something materialized from the rain itself. Doors opened. Men in dark suits emerged, faces hard, eyes scanning the street. The child's face transformed, fear becoming recognition becoming joy, and she reached toward a woman who emerged from the SUV, a woman with dark hair and Vincent's eyes. "Lucia," the woman breathed. "Oh God, Lucia!" And then Vincent arrived. He emerged from the second SUV, tall enough that he had to duck slightly to clear the door, broad-shouldered, moving like a man who has never questioned his right to take up space in any room. He wore a dark coat then, cashmere worth more than Sophia's yearly rent. His eyes, dark, penetrating, the color of a storm, scanned the scene and landed on Sophia. For a moment, he simply looked at her. Sophia felt naked under that gaze, like he could see through her cheap yellow dress to the broken woman underneath, to the woman who was $1 away from complete collapse, to the woman who had nothing left to give and had just given everything to a stranger's child. "Thank you," he said. His voice was deep and solid like an oath, like something carved from stone and time. "I didn't do anything," Sophia whispered. She was in the street." "You saved her life," he said. "We saw from the corner. We saw what you did." Then his daughter Lucia was gone. She was with her mother. She was being led to the SUV. Vincent stood there in the rain, water streaming down his face, and he looked at Sophia like she was something he did not understand, something that did not compute within the framework of his world. "What is your name?" he asked. "Sophia," she said. "Sofia Rivera." He nodded slowly. Then he was turning away, his men were ushering him back to the SUV, and Sophia was alone again on the corner with the rain falling down and her heart still racing and the terrible knowledge that her good deed had changed nothing. Micah was still dying. The bills were still unpaid. Her life was still collapsing. But Vincent did not forget her face. At that same hour, he was in his office in the North End, a room filled with mahogany and leather and the kind of silence that money and power create. Marco stood beside him, and Pietro was running details through their secure network, and Vincent was opening a folder that detailed everything they could learn about Sofia Rivera in 6 hours. Age, 28. Occupation, overnight waitress at Murphy's Diner, tips averaging $18 per shift. Husband, deceased, 2 years prior, leukemia, hospital debts of $340,000. Child, one son, Micah, age 7, admitted to Boston Children's Hospital with ventricular septal defect, life expectancy without surgery estimated at 8 to 14 days. Cost of surgery, $200,000. Money in Sofia's account, $47. Rent due tomorrow, $1,200. Vincent read the file without moving. His eyes tracked across every detail, every number, every brutal mathematical certainty of her approaching extinction. And he thought of his son, dead for 6 years, his name carved on a marble stone in a cemetery where the grass never stays green long. Thought of the moment when the doctors said the surgery was not possible, that the cancer was too advanced, that there was nothing left but time and pain and watching your child die by inches. Find her, Vincent said, and his voice was like winter's edge, like a blade wrapped in ice. Find Sofia Rivera. Find out everything. And then you will tell me where she is, and I will go to her, and we will discuss a transaction. Marco blinked. What kind of transaction? The kind, Vincent said quietly, where a debt gets paid. Outside the warehouse, the rain continues its assault on the metal roof, 1,000 fists demanding entrance. Inside, Sofia stands frozen on the concrete floor, and Vincent Ferraro remains on his knees before her, the most powerful man in Boston's underworld, reduced to something human and broken and desperate. You saved her, he says again. You, a stranger, you gave her back to me. And I failed my own son. I had all the power in the world and I could not save him. Sofia's hand moves without her permission. She reaches down and she touches his shoulder and she feels him shake beneath her palm like he is made of paper, like he might come apart completely if anyone holds him too hard. What's your daughter's name? She asks. Lucia, he says. She's 5 years old. She was crossing the street to get her mother a flower from the corner market. She wanted to surprise her. She was 5 years old and she almost died because I was not paying attention. But she didn't die, Sofia says, and something shifts in her voice, something like strength entering from some hidden place. She lived. And she lived because she stops. She looks down at this man, this powerful man, this man who could destroy worlds if he wanted to, and she sees what he actually is, a father who lost a child and cannot bear to lose another. Will you tell me about your son? Sofia asks. And Vincent Ferraro, who has not spoken about his dead son to anyone in 6 years, begins to speak. He speaks in the warehouse with the rain hammering the roof and the bare bulb swinging overhead. He speaks while Marco and Pietro listen with their backs against the wall, watching their boss come undone in front of a woman they have never seen before. He speaks about a boy named Gabriel, about the same diagnosis that Micah carries, about the surgery that costs more than hope. What Sofia does not know, what neither Marco nor Pietro will tell her, not yet, not until the moment is right, is that the man kneeling before her has already made a decision. Before he even came to the warehouse, before he even ordered his men to find her, he decided what he was going to do. He was going to save her son. And in doing so, he was going to paint a target on himself that would draw every predator in Boston's underworld straight toward him. He was going to challenge a system that feeds on the invisible, that destroys the powerless, that crushes people like Sofia into dust. But none of that matters yet. None of that exists in the warehouse with the rain and the bare bulb and the space between Sofia's hand on his shoulder and his heart finally beginning to break open in a way that might let something new grow inside. The apartment was a coffin made of drywall and broken dreams. 6:47 in the morning, and Sofia Rivera lay folded on a couch that smelled like mold and yesterday's desperation, her shoulders wedged against the armrest, her feet dangling off the edge because the couch was designed for people smaller than heartbreak. The eviction notice on the door read like a death sentence in Times New Roman font. 8 days remaining. 8 days until the landlord, a man named Harold Brennan who collected suffering the way other men collected watches, would have the locks changed and her possessions thrown into the street like garbage. She did not move yet. Moving meant the day was real. In the bedroom, Micah slept with his stuffed rabbit pressed against his chest, his breathing shallow and slightly irregular. The cardiologist had explained the word, arrhythmia, and Sofia had nodded as though she understood, but what she actually understood was that her 7-year-old son was running out of time. 2 weeks. 14 days between now and August 28th. That was the deadline the hospital had given her, the non-negotiable line drawn in medical jargon and financial cruelty. The surgery would cost $200,000. $200,000. Sofia had $4.73 in her checking account. She checked her phone at 6:52. 17 missed calls from creditors. 7 text messages, each one a small blade between her ribs. The one from Boston Children's Hospital read like scripture written in her native language of terror, surgery deposit $200,000 required by August 28th, 14 days, no exceptions. She did not cry. Her tears had somewhere else to be. The kitchen was 4 steps from the couch. Sofia moved through them like a ghost, pulling open the cabinet where she kept Micah's breakfast. 1 packet of oatmeal remaining. 1. She had been rationing for 3 weeks, measuring out portions so small they barely qualified as meals, but Micah needed to eat and he needed to stay strong for what was coming, and she would starve before she let him know they were down to single-serving packets. She filled the pot with water. While it heated, she reached into the pocket of the dress hanging on the back of the kitchen chair, a yellow dress, faded from countless washings, hemmed at the bottom where it had frayed, and withdrew the prayer card. It was old, soft from handling, the edges curled like ancient parchment. Her mother's prayer card, the only thing she had salvaged from a childhood that had burned down when Sofia was 14. The card showed the Virgin Mary, her hand extended in blessing, and on the back, in her mother's careful handwriting, for when the darkness feels eternal, remember that even the longest night must end. Sofia held it for 30 seconds. Then she slipped it back into her pocket. The oatmeal was brown and thin, the way she had learned to make it with extra water. She stirred honey into it, real honey, expensive honey, a luxury she could not afford but purchased anyway because Micah deserved one beautiful thing, and set the bowl on the small table where they ate their meals together. She counted the money before she did anything else. It was a ritual now, a form of prayer or maybe a form of torture. $5 in her other pocket, withdrawn 3 days ago from an ATM that charged her $3 in fees to access her own money. 2 of those dollars had gone to bus fare. 1 had gone to toilet paper at a pharmacy. The remaining $5 had traveled with her everywhere, slipping in and out of her pocket like a secret, or a wound. She held the $5 bill between her fingers and looked at it the way some people look at photographs of the dead. For 15 in the afternoon found Sofia 2 blocks from home, walking through the North End with her cleaning supplies in a canvas bag that had split at the seams. The 3rd housekeeping shift had ended 15 minutes early because the woman who employed her, a woman named Patricia Chen who at least said thank you, which was more than most, had decided not to have guests after all. 15 minutes early meant no pay for those 15 minutes. Such was the mathematics of poverty. The heat was murderous. August in Boston hung over the city like a predator's breath, the humidity so thick it felt like swimming through soup. Storm clouds were gathering at the edges of the sky, dark and swollen, and the first few drops of rain had begun to fall, fat and random, the kind of rain that promised worse weather on the horizon. Hanover Street was crowded, tourists navigating the North End, delivery trucks double-parked, the smell of garlic and oregano drifting from restaurant kitchens. Sofia was walking with her eyes down, already rehearsing the route to the bus stop, already thinking about what she could make for Micah's dinner with the ingredients she had at home, when she heard the sound. A child's voice. A scream, but not angry. Terrified. Sofia's head snapped up. 30 feet ahead, near the crosswalk at the intersection, a little girl in a pink dress had stepped off the curb. She was maybe 4 years old, with dark curls and the kind of small determined face that belonged to a child chasing something precious. A red ball. It bounced into the street with a kind of casual cruelty that objects possess, and the girl had simply followed it, no looking, no thinking, no understanding of the vehicle that was bearing down on her from the left at 45 miles per hour. The black SUV was still 50 feet away. Sofia could see the driver's face, confused, not yet registering what he was seeing. The child stood in the middle of the street, staring at the ball. Sofia did not think. Thinking was the enemy of action. Her worn shoes slapped against wet pavement. Her cleaning supplies scattered. The canvas bag split completely and bottles of bleach and disinfectant rolled into the street, but she was already moving, already closing the distance, already reaching the girl in the moment before mathematics became tragedy. She grabbed the child around the waist and twisted, using her body as a shield, and they hit the sidewalk hard. Sofia's palms tore open on the concrete. The girl's head snapped back but did not hit anything. Sofia rolled them both away from the edge just as the SUV's horn erupted, a sound like the world ending, and the brakes screamed and the tires left black marks on the wet pavement. The horn stopped. The SUV stopped. Everything stopped. The little girl was crying. High-pitched, panicked wails, her small body shaking against Sofia. Sofia checked her hands, her head, her legs. No blood. No injuries. Just terrified. "It is okay," Sofia whispered, though it was not okay, though nothing had been okay for a long time. "You are safe. You are safe." A woman in designer sunglasses, white linen clothes that probably cost more than Sofia's monthly rent, ran toward them screaming. "Isabella! Isabella! Get away from her!" She tore the child from Sofia's arms without waiting for a response, without making eye contact, without saying thank you or even acknowledging that Sofia had just saved her daughter's life. The woman rushed toward a waiting limousine with Isabella still crying, and the car was moving before the door was fully closed. Sofia sat on the wet sidewalk in her yellow dress, her palms bleeding, rain beginning to fall harder now. Around her, the street was already moving on. Tourists stepped around her. A delivery driver honked. A businessman on his phone walked past without looking down. She allowed herself 30 seconds to cry. 30 seconds of shaking, of letting the rain mix with tears, of understanding that she had no energy to cry properly, that her body was too tired and her heart was too broken to do anything but sit there and bleed into her own borrowed time. Then she stood up. Because Micah needed dinner. Because standing up was the only choice that was available to her. The walk to the bus stop took 12 minutes. Her purse was gone, snatched by someone in the chaos, probably, or left behind in her rush. That $5. That prayer card. Everything. She did not have time to go back and look for it. The bus would arrive in 8 minutes if the schedule was accurate, which it never was, and she was already late and already falling behind on all the things that never stopped falling. The rain was coming harder now. Sofia stood at the bus shelter with water dripping from her hair and her palms throbbing and the strange clarity that came from having lost everything, which meant she had nothing left to lose. A black Mercedes pulled alongside the curb. The window rolled down slowly. A man sat in the driver's seat, broad-shouldered, with the kind of face that had been arranged by careful violence and expensive tailoring. He was wearing a suit that cost more than Sofia's annual rent. "Get in," he said. His voice was not unkind. That made it worse somehow. "No." Sofia kept her eyes forward, on the empty street where the bus should arrive. "You saved Isabella Ferraro." The name meant nothing to her. "Get in. Mr. Ferraro wants to thank you. Just 5 minutes." Sofia started walking. Her legs moved automatically, her mind already preparing excuses for Micah, ways to explain why she was late, how to make his dinner stretch further. She did not know who this man was. She did not know what he wanted. She knew only that men in expensive suits did not pick up women in yellow dresses to say thank you. The Mercedes followed slowly, its engine purring like a satisfied animal. Sofia walked faster. She could see the alley that would cut across to her building, the narrow passage between two brick buildings where she sometimes walked to avoid the street when she did not want to be seen. She turned into it. The alley was empty. Dark. The kind of place where sound died. When she heard the car doors closing behind her, when she realized there were now 2 more vehicles blocking the exit, when she saw the men stepping out of those vehicles with the casual confidence of people who were used to taking what they wanted, Sofia understood that she had made a mistake. She ran toward the far end of the alley, toward the warehouse that backed onto it, but there were already men emerging from the shadows, and she stopped, her breath coming in short gasps, her bleeding palms raised like she was surrendering to something inevitable. A man stepped forward. It was the one from the Mercedes. His hands were raised in what he probably thought was a peaceful gesture. "Please," he said, and there was something almost gentle in the word. "He is not going to hurt you. He is grateful. Just 5 minutes." Sofia's heart was hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She had saved a child. She had done a good thing. And somehow this was how the universe chose to repay her, by delivering her into the hands of people who moved through the world like they owned it. She had no one left. No family. No friends who could help. No money. No power. Just the $5 she had carried in her pocket and the prayer card and the understanding that she was entirely alone. So when the man gestured toward the car again, Sofia moved. She walked toward it like a woman walking toward her own funeral. The men surrounded her, not roughly, but completely. She was inside the Mercedes before she had time to think about escape, before she had time to realize that she was leaving behind everything she knew. The car moved through Boston's rain-soaked streets. Sofia sat in the back seat, her hands folded in her lap, her yellow dress dripping onto the leather upholstery, and tried to pray using the words her mother had written on a prayer card she no longer possessed. The warehouse materialized out of the rain like a place that existed between worlds. 30 miles away, in a penthouse on the 42nd floor of a building that overlooked the entire city, Vincent Ferraro sat in darkness and watched security footage on repeat. His daughter Isabella was asleep in her bed, her small body curled under silk sheets, her breathing steady and deep and alive. He had watched the footage 17 times. 17 times he had watched a woman in a yellow dress see his daughter stepping into traffic. 17 times he had watched her drop everything and run. 17 times he had watched her use her body as a shield. 17 times he had watched her save his daughter's life without thinking, without hesitation, without asking for anything in return. Vincent Ferraro had not cried since his son Gabriel died 8 years ago. He cried now. His shoulders shook. His face remained perfectly still, but tears ran down his cheeks like rain, and he did not wipe them away, because there was no one here to see him come undone, and because some losses never stop breaking open the people they touch. He picked up his phone. "Find her," he said. "And bring her to the warehouse." The warehouse basement was silent except for the sound of rain drumming against the metal roof 30 feet above. Sofia pressed herself against the cold brick wall, her yellow dress torn at the shoulder, her palms scraped raw and bleeding where she had hit the asphalt saving a child she did not know. Her breathing came in shallow gasps. She did not understand why she was here. She did not understand why the men in black suits had appeared at her housekeeping job at St. Mary's Hospital, whispered something to her supervisor, and led her to a car with tinted windows. The door at the far end of the basement opened. Vincent Ferraro stood in the threshold, and for a moment he did not move. His Armani suit, worth $8,000, was soaked through with rain. Water dripped from his dark hair onto his shoulders. His face was composed, controlled, the face of a man accustomed to holding everything inside. But his hands were shaking. Marco and Pietro flanked him, their bodies rigid with tension, their eyes fixed forward like soldiers awaiting orders. Pietro leaned close and whispered, "Boss, you do not have to do this tonight. You can rest. Let this wait." Vincent shook his head. His jaw clenched. A tear ran down his cheekbone, and he did not wipe it away. He walked toward Sofia. Each step was measured, deliberate, but his breathing was not steady. Sofia's terror spiked. She pressed harder against the wall, preparing to run, to fight, to do something, but Vincent dropped to his knees in front of her like a man whose legs had simply given out. Sofia gasped. She flinched backward. Vincent's voice, when he spoke, was broken like glass. "You saved my daughter." Sofia stammered, I didn't know she was yours. I would have helped any child. Any child at all." That admission seemed to shatter something in Vincent. His shoulders shook. Tears streamed openly down his face now, and he reached into his jacket. Sofia flinched violently, her body tensing for violence, but Vincent pulled out something small and worn. Her purse. He set it at her feet like an offering. "My men found it on the street," Vincent said. His voice cracked between words. "Everything is inside. The $5. The prayer card your mother wrote. I added nothing. I swear it on my daughter's life." Sofia stared at the purse, not understanding. She did not move. Vincent looked up at her from his knees, and when he spoke again, his words came like a confession to a priest. "I had a son. His name was Dante. He was 3 years old when they diagnosed him with a congenital heart defect, the same defect that is killing your son right now. The surgery was scheduled. I was supposed to be there. But I was in a meeting that I told myself was too important to miss. I chose business over my child. Dante died on the operating table while I was discussing profit margins." His voice dropped to a whisper. "He died, and I was not there. I failed him." The warehouse went absolutely still. Marco and Pietro stood frozen against the far wall, their eyes wide, because their boss had never spoken his son's name aloud. Not once in 8 years. Not at funerals or anniversaries or in the dark hours of nights when grief prowls like a hungry animal. "You did not hesitate," Vincent continued, his eyes locked on Sofia's. "You ran into traffic for a child you had never met. You put yourself between her and death without thinking. Without asking for anything in return. He could not finish." His voice broke completely. Sofia's terror began shifting into something else. Something tender and terrible at the same time. She slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor at his level, her knees drawn up, her torn dress spreading around her like a deflated sail. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "I have a son. Micah. He is 7 years old. He has the same condition your son had. He needs heart surgery in 14 days, or he will die. I have no money. I have no insurance. I have tried everything. So when I saw your daughter stepping into traffic, I thought, maybe I cannot save my own child, but maybe I can save someone else's. Maybe that counts for something. Maybe that means something." Vincent stared at her, this small, soaked woman carrying a grief that mirrored his own, carrying a burden that had nearly broken her completely. "How much?" Vincent whispered. "How much does the surgery cost?" $200,000, Sofia said. "I did not tell you this to ask you for money. You wanted to know why I helped her. That is why. When you have nothing left to give, you give what you have. You give hope." Vincent stood. His movements were slow, deliberate, like a man waking from a long sleep. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Marco. I want everything. Every detail about a boy named Micah Rivera. His medical condition, his prognosis, his surgery date. And I want everything about Sofia Rivera. Who she knows. Who she trusts. Who has hurt her. Everything." He ended the call and looked down at Sofia with red-rimmed eyes. "I am going to help you. Not because you saved my daughter, but because I could not save my son. Please let me try." Sofia stared up at this powerful man, this man whose tears were still wet on his face, and whispered, "Why would you do this? I am nobody." Vincent extended his hand to help her up. When she took it, his grip was gentle but firm. "Sometimes the people who seem invisible carry the greatest light," he said. 3 hours later, in a corner office on the 42nd floor of a building that overlooked all of Boston, Marco sat across from Vincent with a folder open. Vincent did not look away from the window. The city lights spread below him like a map of his empire, every street, every building, every dark corner under his control. But none of that mattered now. Marcus Webb, Marco said quietly. Age 38. Assault charges dropped twice. Domestic violence calls to police, all buried. 2 cousins on the Boston Police Department, both named Webb. He has been stalking Sofia Rivera for 6 months. For police reports filed. All dismissed. Vincent's jaw tightened. His hands, resting on his desk, curled slowly into fists. And Cordelia Blackwood? Vincent asked. Marco hesitated. She received a phone call from Marcus Webb approximately 3 hours ago. 10 minutes after Sofia arrived at the restaurant. We do not know the content, but Cordelia immediately made 2 calls. One to a federal judge named Hamilton. One to someone at Boston Children's Hospital where the surgery is scheduled. Vincent turned from the window. His eyes were cold now, empty of tears, filled instead with something darker. Monitor both of them. Every call, every message, every breath they take. And put for men outside Sofia's building. Nobody gets close to her or her son. Nobody. Meanwhile, in a penthouse on Beacon Hill, Cordelia Blackwood sat at her antique desk, a martini untouched in front of her, her face arranged in an expression of perfect satisfaction. She was 53, with blonde hair swept back in a style that cost $400 to maintain, her jewelry understated but worth more than most people's homes. She wore the kind of clothes that whispered wealth rather than shouted it, because old money never needs to announce itself. On her desk lay a photograph. Christopher Blackwood at 25, handsome, smiling, alive. On the back, in Cordelia's precise handwriting, before she destroyed him. 20 years ago, Sofia Marino had been engaged to Cordelia's son. They were supposed to marry. Cordelia had already commissioned the invitations. But Sofia had left him, just walked away, for some nobody teacher named Daniel Rivera. Christopher had never recovered. He had spiraled into drinking, into recklessness, into a lonely death on Storrow Drive at 3 in the morning when his car wrapped around a bridge support. Cordelia blamed Sofia. She had always blamed Sofia. And now Sofia was climbing higher, attaching herself to Vincent Ferraro like a parasite. Cordelia would not allow it. She picked up her phone and dialed. A woman answered on the first ring. Judge Hamilton, this is Cordelia Blackwood. Yes, I know it is late. I need a favor, and I am calling in every debt you owe me. I want a custody challenge filed against Sofia Rivera. Mental incompetence, financial instability, unfit parent. I want it filed tomorrow morning. She paused, listening. I do not care if there is no basis for it. Create one. And then call the hospital board. Tell them the Rivera surgery needs to be delayed. Compliance review, infection risk assessment, whatever excuse sounds legitimate. I want that surgery pushed back by at least 2 weeks. She hung up the phone. Outside Sofia's apartment building, Marcus Webb sat in his car in the darkness. He had followed her all week, watching her work, watching her move through the world like a ghost that nobody saw. But tonight everything had changed. She had walked into a restaurant in the North End, and she had walked out with a man whose name made even the corrupt cops nervous. He did not understand what she was doing with Vincent Ferraro, but he understood one thing: she was his. She had always been his. She just did not know it yet. He called Cordelia. When she answered, he could hear the satisfaction in her voice before she spoke a single word. Marcus, you have done well keeping track of her. But I need you to make sure she understands what is coming. Nothing serious. Just enough to remind her that she is not safe. Not with you watching. Not with anyone. When Marcus hung up, he sat in the darkness of his car and smiled. He did not know that on the roof of the building across the street, 2 men in dark clothing were recording his license plate number, his vehicle identification number, the exact time he arrived, and the exact time he would leave. He did not know that Vincent Ferraro's network was already mapping his movements, his patterns, his habits. He did not know that the next time he made a move towards Sofia, it would be the last free choice he ever made. At 2:51 in the morning, Sofia sat alone in her apartment with the kitchen knife in her lap. She had pushed furniture against the doors. Micah was asleep in the bedroom, his small body rising and falling with each breath, his chest moving in the way that scared her, the way that meant every heartbeat was work, every breath an effort, every moment precious and fragile. Her phone had rung 16 times. 16. And each time, the name on the screen had been Marcus. She did not answer. At 3:04, a text message arrived, "I saw you with him. You think he can protect you? You are mine, Sofia. You have always been mine. And I am coming to get what belongs to me." Sofia locked every door again, checked every window, and sat in the darkness until the first light of morning began to creep across the Boston skyline. The bathroom floor was cold tile beneath her trembling hands. Sofia Rivera sat in the darkness of her apartment at 2:47 in the morning, and in her palm lay 60 white pills that could end everything. The humid August air pressed against the broken window unit like a suffocating weight. She could barely breathe. Micah slept in the next room. His chest rose and fell in that frightening rhythm she had come to know too well, each breath an effort, each heartbeat a small miracle she could not take for granted. 3 days until his surgery. 3 days until the $400,000 Vincent had given her would transform into a chance at his life. 3 days. But Marcus had other plans. The attack came at 9 o'clock that evening on Hanover Street, where the August humidity hung between the brick buildings like a curse. Sofia was walking home from the bus stop, her phone in her pocket heavy with 16 missed calls, each one from the same name burning on her screen. The streetlights reflected off wet pavement from an earlier rain as she turned the corner toward her neighborhood. That was when he stepped out of the alley. Marcus Webb looked exactly as he always did, sharp jawline, expensive cologne, the kind of handsome that masked something rotten underneath. He was 34 now, but the drugs and anger had aged him harder. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, and they fixed on her with the intensity of a predator who had finally cornered his prey. Sofia. Her name came out like a curse. "You ignored my calls." She tried to walk around him. The sidewalk was empty. No witnesses. No one to help. He grabbed her arm and squeezed until pain shot through her shoulder. She gasped, tried to pull away, but his grip tightened like a steel band. "You are embarrassing me. Running to some gangster? You think he cares about you? You are nothing. You were nothing when I found you, and you are nothing now." Sofia jerked her arm free, leaving fingernail marks on his wrist. "Stay away from me, Marcus. I have filed reports. If you touch me again..." "Reports?" He laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "My cousins are cops, baby. Nobody cares about your reports. Nobody cares about you." He stepped closer, backing her against the brick wall of a closed storefront. The building was rough against her spine. Marcus leaned in, his breath smelling like whiskey and cigarettes. "Here is what is going to happen. You are going to stop returning Ferraro's calls. You are going to quit whatever arrangement you have with him. And you are going to come back to me like you should have years ago." Sofia's heart hammered against her ribs. "No. Or," he continued, his voice dropping to something quieter and far more dangerous, "I am going to make sure your son never makes it to that surgery. Accidents happen to sick kids all the time. Hospital equipment malfunctions. Anesthesia reactions. Such tragedy." He smiled. Such preventable tragedy. Sofia's world tilted. Everything went white. She pushed past him with a strength born of pure terror and ran. Marcus did not follow, just laughed and called after her, his voice echoing down the street, "You cannot run from me, Sofia. I know where you live. I know where Micah sleeps." She made it to her apartment building with her lungs burning and her mind fracturing. She locked the door, locked it again, locked it a third time, then pushed furniture against it until her muscles screamed. Then she collapsed against the wall and stared at nothing. By 2 in the morning, she had arranged 17 missed calls in order on her phone screen. 17. The last text message made her skin crawl. I saw you with him. You think he can protect you? You are mine, Sofia. You have always been mine. And I am coming to get what belongs to me. At 2:47, she sat on the bathroom floor with the bottle of sleeping pills her doctor had prescribed months ago. 60 pills. Never opened until now. She had counted them twice to be certain. Her hands trembled as she poured them into her palm, watching them catch the fluorescent light like tiny stars. The bottle rattled when it emptied, a sound like distant thunder. She filled a glass with water from the sink. The tap ran cold, and she thought about Micah's surgery. Thought about the $400,000 sitting in a hospital account with his name on it. Thought about how her death would activate the life insurance policy. $50,000 more. Enough for his recovery. Enough for him to grow up safe, away from Marcus, away from her broken life, raised by people who had money and stability and the ability to protect him from men like the one hunting her through Boston streets. Her hand shook as she raised the pills to her mouth. And then, from the bedroom, muffled but unmistakable, Micah coughed. That wet, labored cough that meant his heart was struggling against his ribs. The cough that had terrified her for 3 years. Mama. His small voice called into the darkness. Mama, where are you? Sofia dropped the pills. They scattered across the bathroom floor like white rain, bouncing and rolling into corners. She dropped the glass. It shattered in the sink. She ran to his bedroom, scooped him into her arms, and held him as his breathing evened out against her chest. His small hands gripped her shirt. He was so light. So fragile. So entirely dependent on her to keep him alive. I am here, baby, she whispered into his hair. I am here. She carried him back to bed and lay beside him until dawn broke over Boston, and then she made the call she had been too afraid to make. The phone rang twice before Vincent answered. He was awake. Alert. As if he had been waiting for her call. Sofia. His voice came through like a promise. I need help. Her voice shattered like the glass in the sink. I cannot do this alone anymore. I have no one left. I am coming. Vincent's response was immediate, sharp, the voice of a man accustomed to commanding the world. Lock your doors. I will be there in 12 minutes. He arrived in 10. The sound of his black SUV pulling up outside reached her like a prayer answered. Vincent moved through her apartment like a force of nature, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a charcoal suit that cost more than her monthly rent. His dark eyes took in everything in a single sweep. Marco and Pietro flanked him, their presence filling the small space like a wall. When Vincent saw the scattered pills on the bathroom floor, something shifted in his face. The carefully controlled expression cracked. He walked to her without speaking and pulled her into his arms. She fit against him like she had always belonged there, her head against his chest, his hand cradling the back of her neck. You are not alone, he said quietly. Not anymore. Tell me everything. Sofia told him about Cordelia Blackwood's threat at the hospital, the icy woman who had introduced herself as the mother of someone Sofia had wronged decades ago, who held the hospital board in her palm and had already made calls to delay Micah's surgery. Told him about Marcus's attack tonight, about the threats to Micah's life, about having no family left and no friends who had remained when the debt became impossible. Vincent's expression transformed from concern to something cold and lethal. He made 2 phone calls, his voice steady and controlled. The first was to a number Sofia could not hear, the woman who threatened the surgery and the man who touched her tonight. I want both of them. Clean. No evidence. Tomorrow. The second was to his lawyer, file a restraining order against Marcus Webb at 9 a.m. Use Judge Castellano, not Hamilton. Hamilton is compromised. And pull every favor we have at Boston Children's Hospital. I want Sofia Rivera's son listed as priority surgical case, immune to board interference. He hung up and looked at her directly. Marcus Webb and Cordelia Blackwood have made their last threats. By tomorrow night, they will be gone. What are you going to do? Sofia whispered. What I should have done the moment I learned their names, Vincent said. I am going to protect you. Permanently. The next evening at 11:47 p.m., Marcus Webb lay on his couch in his Southie apartment, drunk and scrolling through photographs he had taken of Sofia while stalking her. The door exploded inward. 12 men in black tactical gear moved through his apartment like ghosts. Marcus screamed, scrambled backward, clawing at the furniture. The men were on him in seconds, ex-military, trained, ruthless, their faces covered. The leader grabbed him by the throat and lifted him off the ground. You like scaring women? The leader asked quietly. Threatening children? Marcus choked out words between gasps. Please, please, I will leave her alone. I swear, I will never. They dragged him down the stairs. Marcus fought, screaming, clawing at the walls, but he was nothing against these men. Nothing. His screams echoed through the building as they threw him into a black van. The doors slammed shut. Marcus Webb disappeared into the Boston night, and he would spend the next 40 years in a labor camp in Eastern Europe, his identity erased, his cousins on the police force told he had fled to avoid gambling debts. At 12:23 a.m., Cordelia Blackwood's Beacon Hill penthouse erupted into chaos. 6 men in stolen FBI raid jackets walked through her door. She was hosting a late dinner party for guests, expensive wine, Debussy playing softly in the background. The lead agent showed her a warrant, conspiracy to commit medical fraud, bribery of public officials, attempted obstruction of a minor's medical care. Cordelia's face drained white. This is absurd. I am a board member. I made a suggestion, nothing illegal. We have recordings of your calls, the agent said. Financial records showing payments to delay the Rivera boys' surgery. One of her guests, a Boston Globe journalist, was already texting the newsroom. Her husband, a federal judge, did not answer his phone because Vincent's people had already contacted him with evidence of Cordelia's affairs and financial crimes. He was filing for divorce. The fake FBI agents led her out in handcuffs in front of her guests and neighbors. By morning, her arrest was on every front page, Boston socialite arrested for conspiracy in child medical fraud case. The charges were real. Vincent's lawyers had given actual evidence to the actual FBI. Cordelia would be convicted within 6 months. 40 years in federal prison. Her wealth seized. Her legacy erased. Back at Sofia's apartment, Vincent sat beside her watching the morning news broadcast Cordelia's arrest. Micah slept against Vincent's side, his small hand resting on the man's chest. Sofia stared at the screen, her mouth open. What did you do? She whispered. I removed the threats, Vincent said quietly. Permanently. They will never hurt you again. Sofia did not know whether to be terrified or grateful. She settled on, thank you. Vincent looked at her, and for the first time, she saw something beyond duty in his eyes. But he said nothing. Just, Micah's surgery is in 2 days. Nothing will stop it now. What Sofia did not know was that Vincent had already made a decision, one that would change everything. He would disappear from her life the moment Micah recovered, because men like him do not deserve women like her, and he would not let his darkness touch her light. A decision he was about to regret. The surgical waiting room at Boston General Hospital held that particular silence of places where time moves differently. 7 hours and 18 minutes had passed since they wheeled Micah into the operating theater. 7 hours of Sofia Rivera sitting in a plastic chair under fluorescent lights that made everything look like it was drowning, her fingers wrapped around a cold coffee cup she'd forgotten to drink, her leg bouncing in that rhythm people fall into when their child's heart is being stitched back together by a surgeon's hands. She wore the same blue dress she'd worn to court the week before. It had a small stain near the collar from when she'd spilled coffee in the courthouse bathroom, trying to steady herself before Marcus Webb's lawyer arrived. She hadn't changed because changing required energy she didn't have. She'd showered that morning in water so hot her skin turned pink, scrubbing like the heat could wash away what was about to happen. It couldn't. Beside her, Vincent Ferraro sat absolutely still. A man in a cashmere coat that cost more than Sofia's monthly rent, his expensive watch catching the fluorescent light in cold glints, his massive frame somehow fitting into the small chair as if his body knew how to become invisible. He'd been there since 5 in the morning when Marco had driven Sofia to the hospital. He'd been there through her signing consent forms with hands that shook. He'd been there through the anesthesiologist's calm recitation of risks. He'd been there without speaking a single word. Marco and Pietro stood guard outside the surgical waiting room like stone sentinels. No one questioned their presence. Vincent Ferraro didn't ask permission. He simply appeared in places, and the world rearranged itself around him. Sofia's leg stopped bouncing at 4:34 p.m. She felt it happen the moment her body went rigid, all her muscles locking tight like a fist. Vincent's hand moved toward hers. He didn't take it. He just rested his fingers on the plastic chair between them, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his skin. "He's going to be fine," Vincent said. His voice was deep and solid like an oath, but there was something else underneath it now, something fragile that hadn't been there before. "Micah is strong. Like his mother." Sofia didn't answer. She was counting seconds. Counting backwards from 300 like the anesthesiologist had said the surgery would take. She'd gotten to 0 hours ago and started counting again. 1,000 seconds. 2,000. She couldn't stop. The door opened at 4:37 p.m. The surgeon wore a mask pulled down around his neck, and his eyes were bright with the particular exhaustion that came with good news. He looked at Sofia and smiled. "The surgery was successful," he said. "We repaired the valve and reinforced the septal wall. The tissue response was excellent. Micah is in recovery now. He's going to be fine." Sofia didn't breathe. She couldn't locate her lungs. The words had entered her body but hadn't made it to her brain yet. She was still trapped in the moment before the door opened, still waiting, still dying in that small plastic chair. Vincent's hand found hers. His fingers wrapped around her palm and squeezed once, firm and certain as a promise. "He's going to be fine," the surgeon repeated, because he'd seen this before, this delay in processing good news when you'd been holding your breath for so long your body forgot how to exhale. "Micah is going to be just fine." Sofia's face crumpled. She didn't scream. She didn't shout. She made a sound like something breaking, raw and fractured, and the opposite of all the silence she'd been holding for 7 hours and 18 minutes. She stood up, and Vincent stood with her, and she pressed her face against his chest, and the expensive cashmere coat absorbed her sobs like it had been designed for exactly this purpose. Vincent's arms closed around her. His chin rested on her hair. His body trembled once, and Sofia felt it because she was pressed so close against him that she could feel everything, the way his heart was racing, the way his breath came shallow and fast, the way a man who had built an empire on control was letting himself shatter just slightly, just enough, just for her. "He's okay," she whispered against his coat. "He's okay. He's going to be okay." "Yes," Vincent said, and his voice cracked in the middle of that single word. "Yes, he is." They stood like that for 4 minutes while the surgeon gave them details about recovery time and follow-up appointments and all the clinical things that meant nothing compared to the fact that Micah Rivera was going to live. That his heart would beat. That he would grow up. That Sofia wouldn't have to bury her son. That night, Sofia fell asleep in a chair beside Micah's hospital bed. His small face was peaceful, his breathing steady and strong. The monitors beeped their reassuring rhythm. His chest rose and fell. Rose and fell. Vincent watched her sleep for exactly 20 minutes. He memorized the slope of her cheekbone in the monitor's blue light. He watched her fingers still gripped around the worn prayer card she'd carried in her pocket for months, the one she'd pulled out while Micah was in surgery, the way people reach for talismans when the world is ending. He watched her like she was something precious that might disappear if he looked away. Then he left. He found Marco in the corridor outside. The lieutenant stood as soon as he saw Vincent emerge, his jaw set with understanding. He already knew what was coming because he'd been waiting for this moment since the day Vincent had disappeared from his compound for 8 hours to bring Sofia to the hospital, since he'd sat beside her in that plastic chair and let his carefully constructed masks fall away. Micah will be in recovery for 2 weeks, Vincent said. His voice was empty, hollowed out. Every day he's here, I want him provided with everything. Food. The best food. Coffee for Sofia. Fresh clothes. Whatever she needs. You will stay here. Pietro will rotate in. Whatever she asks, you give it. Yes, boss, Marco said. I will not be visiting. The words hung in the sterile hospital air like poison gas. Boss. Tell her I am handling business. Tell her I will see her when Micah is released. Tell her whatever you need to tell her, but I will not be here. Marco's eyes narrowed, calculating, already understanding. She is going to ask for you. Every day, Vincent said. Every single day, she will ask. And you will tell her I am busy. You will tell her I have empire business. You will keep her believing that I might return. His hands clenched into fists. Because I cannot. I will not pull her into my world. She deserves better than a man with blood on his hands and a target on his back. She deserves a life without my darkness in it. Marco watched his boss, this man who had built a criminal empire through calculated cruelty, say these words with the voice of a man breaking apart. Why are you doing this? Marco asked, though he already knew. Because I am falling in love with her, Vincent said simply. And I cannot. I will not. She is good. She is light. And I would destroy that. He walked away before Marco could see him cry. For the next 14 days, Sofia asked Marco every single time he came to check on her, "Where is Vincent? Is he coming?" And Marco would give her the same answer, delivered with the exhaustion of repetition, "Business. He is handling business. He will be back when Micah is released." But Vincent didn't come. Micah recovered beautifully. Color returned to his face. Energy flooded back into his small limbs. By day 10, he was pestering the nurses for putting and asking Vincent's name in that way children do when they're trying to commit something important to memory. Sofia held him close on those nights and told him stories about the man who'd saved his life, knowing with each word that she was saying goodbye to something that had only just begun. On September 3rd, Sofia carried Micah home to their apartment. She carried him because he was still weak, still healing, but also because she wanted to hold him, wanted to feel his weight in her arms, wanted to know that this was real and true and not another dream she would wake from. The first thing she noticed was the locks. New locks. Brass and gleaming and impossible to open with her old key. The second thing was that the eviction notice was gone. Sofia's key worked anyway, she didn't understand how until she opened the door and stopped, and the world shifted on its axis. The apartment wasn't the apartment anymore. The water-stained walls had been repainted in soft cream. The carpet had been replaced with new hardwood that smelled like possibility. The furniture was gone, all of it, the threadbare couch, the kitchen chairs with their broken legs propped on books, the mattress she'd pulled from a dumpster, replaced with pieces that looked like they belonged in a magazine, all soft fabrics and clean lines. Micah's bedroom had changed from the closet-sized space with a crib from Goodwill into a room with blue walls and a bed shaped like a race car. There were books on the shelves. Toys in boxes. A small desk with crayons and paper. Windows with white curtains that let the light pour in like a blessing. The kitchen was stocked. Actually stocked. There were groceries in the refrigerator. Fresh vegetables. Milk. Cheese. All the things Sofia had stopped buying because the math never worked out. On the counter sat a stack of bills. Every single one marked in red ink, paid in full. Sofia's hands shook as she set Micah down on the race car bed. He touched it wonderingly, running his small fingers over the painted cars on the headboard. "Mommy, look," he whispered. "This is so pretty." She couldn't answer. Her throat had closed. There was an envelope on the kitchen table, her name written in careful block letters on the front. Sofia's handwriting, except it wasn't. She would know Vincent's handwriting anywhere now, though she'd only seen it once before, on the deed to her apartment that she couldn't possibly own, on documents that couldn't possibly be real. She opened the envelope. Inside was a deed. Her name. The apartment. Paid in full. No mortgage. No debt. Just ownership, clean and simple and impossible. Inside was a bank statement. Sofia Rivera. Account balance, $500,000. Inside was a note written in that same careful hand. For Micah's future. And yours. You will never struggle again. Thank you for saving my daughter and reminding me what goodness looks like. V. Sofia read it 3 times. 4 times. She didn't cry. She was past crying. She was in that space beyond tears where the heart goes when it's been broken and fixed and broken again, all in the span of a few weeks. She tried calling his number the next morning. The line was disconnected, not paused, not unreachable, but actually gone, like the number had never existed. She went to Ferraro's restaurant on Hanover Street, the one where red sauce simmered in copper pots and the smell of garlic hung thick in the air. The restaurant was closed. The windows were dark. A sign in the glass read, "Sold to new ownership." 3 weeks later, she asked Micah when he came to check on her, a habit Vincent had apparently ordered to continue forever, this man appearing in her building with groceries and coffee and the exhaustion of being caught between 2 people he loved. "Where is Vincent?" Sofia asked. "I need to talk to him. I need to thank him properly. I need to," she stopped because she didn't know how to finish that sentence. She needed to tell him that she loved him. She needed to ask him if what had happened between them in that warehouse was real or just the shadow of something that had died the moment Micah entered surgery. Marco looked uncomfortable in that way men do when they've been ordered to deliver bad news and have to choose between their loyalty to their boss and their compassion for another human being. "Boss said to give you space," Marco said quietly. "He said you have a chance at a normal life now, and he will not take that from you." "I didn't ask him to disappear," Sofia said. Her voice was small. "I asked him to help me. He did. But I thought," she stopped. Marco waited. Sofia tried again, "I thought we were friends. At least." Marco's voice was gentle when he spoke, the voice of a man who'd watched his boss fall in love and walk away from it deliberately, like ripping out his own heart and handing it to someone else because love was the only currency he had that was clean enough to give. "Boss does not have friends, Ms. Rivera. He has soldiers and enemies. You are the first person in 15 years he cared about who was neither. That terrifies him. So he is doing what he thinks is right, he is letting you go." Sofia stood in her new apartment that afternoon, surrounded by evidence of Vincent's care, and felt heartbreak settle into her bones like a permanent guest. 1 year passed. Micah became a thriving 8-year-old with pink cheeks and a laugh that could light up a whole room. Soccer became his passion. He played forward on a city league team. Sofia attended every game and cheered with her whole heart while other parents looked at her with something like envy because their children were alive and hers was too, and the relief of that never faded. Sofia's cleaning company grew. She'd used Vincent's money wisely, $50,000 to pay off all her remaining debt, another $100,000 to start a legitimate business. She hired other struggling single mothers. She paid fair wages. She offered childcare. She built something good with her hands. By year 2, she had offices in 3 cities. By year 3, she was successful. Stable. Lonely. She thought about Vincent Ferraro every single day. She'd never loved him with the kind of love that made sense. She'd loved him because he'd kneeled in front of her and shown her his broken pieces. She'd loved him because he'd looked at her son like Micah was the most precious thing in the world. She'd loved him because underneath all the power and darkness and carefully constructed walls, he was still human enough to weep. On September 3rd, exactly 1 year after Micah's surgery, Sofia stood on the balcony of her new office, a penthouse space in a renovated building in the North End, overlooking the city lights and the Charles River curving beneath them. The air was thick and humid. Rain clouds gathered on the horizon like a threat. She was thinking about Vincent for the 1,000th time when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. Vincent Ferraro stood in her office doorway. He looked older. Worn. There were new lines around his eyes, the kind that came from a year of sleepless nights and decisions made in darkness. But his eyes were the same. That particular shade of storm grey that had haunted her dreams. "Vincent," she breathed. He stepped inside and closed the door with careful precision, as if the sound of it could wake something dangerous. "I am sorry," he said. "I should have called. I should have asked. But I needed to see you." "It has been a year," Sofia said. "You disappeared without a word. I tried to find you. To thank you. She stopped. Couldn't finish. Vincent walked to the window and stood beside her. Both of them looked out at the rain beginning to fall, at the neon lights reflecting off wet streets below. "I stayed away because I thought it was right," Vincent said quietly. "I thought you deserved a life without me in it. Without my world touching yours." Sofia turned to face him. "You do not get to decide that alone. You saved my son. You saved me. And then you vanished like I meant nothing." "You meant everything," Vincent said. His voice cracked in the middle. "That is exactly why I left. I am a criminal, Sofia. I have done terrible things. I have blood on my hands. My world is darkness. I did not want that darkness touching you or Micah." Sofia stepped closer. The city glowed around them. "You think I do not know what you are? I have always known. But I also know you held my son like he was precious. You cried when you talked about your own child. You knelt in front of me and showed me your broken heart. That is who you are too." "I spent a year trying to forget you," Vincent said. "Every single day. Every night I drove past your apartment to make sure you were safe. Marco told me about your business. How well you are doing. I am so proud of you." His voice broke completely. "But I am selfish enough that I could not stay away anymore. I love you, Sofia. I love you, and I have no right to say it, but I am saying it now. I love you." Sofia's eyes filled with tears. "Then do not disappear. Stay. Let me decide if I want you in my life." Vincent reached for her hand. He hesitated, then took it. "I love you because you are fierce. Because you are kind. Because you sacrifice everything for others and never give up even when you have every reason to. I love you because when I am with you I remember what it feels like to be human instead of just a boss. I love you because you make me want to be better than I am." Sofia pulled him closer. "Then be better. With me. Not without me." When Vincent kissed her, it was desperate and gentle all at once. A year of loneliness and longing poured into one moment. When they broke apart, he whispered against her hair, "I am still dangerous. People will come for me. For anyone I love. Then we will face them together," Sofia said. "I have been alone long enough." "So have you." They stood on the balcony as rain poured down, holding each other while the city glowed beneath them like a promise. 6 months later, Sofia and Vincent were engaged. Micah called Vincent Dad now, and Vincent's face lit up every single time he heard it. Isabella and Micah were inseparable, building blanket forts and drawing pictures together. Sofia's business had expanded. Vincent had begun using his resources to fund surgeries for children whose families couldn't afford them, a foundation named after Dante, the son he'd lost so many years ago, now being used to save lives instead of destroy them. The final scene happened in the warehouse where Vincent had first knelt before Sofia. It was being demolished to make room for a children's hospital wing Vincent was funding. Sofia held the worn prayer card she'd carried for so long. Vincent held her other hand. "Do you remember what you said to me here?" Sofia asked. I said a lot of things while crying on my knees, Vincent said. Sofia smiled. You said sometimes the people who seem invisible carry the greatest light. I meant it, Vincent said. You were invisible to the world. But you saved my daughter. You saved me. We saved each other, Sofia whispered. Sometimes the people who seem invisible carry the greatest light. That is the truth at the heart of Sofia Rivera's story. She had nothing, no money, no power, no hope, but she had courage. And when she used that courage to save a child, she changed the course of 2 lives forever. Vincent Ferraro had everything: power, wealth, an empire built on fear, but he had lost what mattered most. And when a stranger showed him kindness without knowing who he was, he remembered how to be human again. This is a story about how one moment of selflessness can topple empires and heal wounds you thought were permanent. How the person who seems invisible might be carrying the greatest light of all. How love does not arrive on a white horse but sometimes in a dark suit, carrying old grief and new hope. If this story moved you, please drop a like and share it with someone who needs to remember that their kindness matters, that their struggles are seen, that they are never as invisible as they think. Subscribe because tomorrow we have another story of lives colliding in ways no one could predict. And remember, the greatest strength is not in never breaking, but in kneeling before someone and showing them your broken pieces. That is where healing begins. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. Goodbye, and we will see you again in the next video.